Um, Next up, we're going to talk about Kyler Murray. This was going on a lot in the sports world, man. Kyler Murray's contract. So the reason why this is kind of being talked about a lot is because there was an unprecedented stipulation in Kyler Murray's contract, which stipulated that he had to conduct independent study in order to be able to reap all the benefits of his contract and remain the starter and live out the full terms of his contract. So there's a clause that is labeled the independent study addendum. And he he and basically this addendum means that material provided to him by the club in order to prepare for the club's next upcoming game, he has to study this stuff 4 hours a week. And he has to receive credit for completing his film study. And these are, I'm paraphrasing there, but Kyler Murray has to show that he has personally studied the provided material in good faith. And people are going nuts about that because they believe it sets a bad precedent for future players, in particular quarterbacks, who are looking to, receive a big payday, and they don't want organizations following suit in the way that the Cardinals did in order to protect themselves against a potentially bad contract. And they gave him a lot of money, man. $230 million. That's a wallop of a contract. He, basically is making, at this point, I think he has the second or third highest contract in the league. I think Aaron Rodgers is still number one. Aaron Rodgers makes $50 million a year. Kyler Murray is either 2 or 3. I think it's Kyler Murray is, or Deshaun Watson is up there too because his is fully guaranteed. But in terms of how much annual per year, I think it's Aaron Rodgers 1, and then it may be Kyler Murray 2, Mahomes 3, and then Watson 4, or something like that. But basically, everybody's going crazy about this because it's never happened before. So, what did you make of Kyler Murray's independent study addendum in his contract?
I think I mean I don't even know. Still some speculation here, but I'm pretty sure Kyler is a Gen Zer. I'm pretty sure he falls into the Gen Z bracket. I think this is very modern. I also heard part of the contract is, he's not allowed to be on his phone and stuff like that. So it has to be a solid, hey, 4 hours. And this is kind of, you see it on Kyler's face. I think he loves football, but I think football loves Kyler more than Kyler loves football. And when it came to football and baseball, I think he liked baseball more. It's a lot of stuff, but follow on. I think he liked baseball more, but I think he saw football as the one where they would give him the platform, the endorsements, the all of that, the contract. I think he saw football as that kind of a lane for him. And I still think in both sports, man, I think he's just good at sports, and he's doesn't I don't want to say he doesn't care. I just think he likes other stuff outside of football. And when he was at Oklahoma, I would see it in his face. I thought he was going to play baseball so much I would see it in his face when he was at Oklahoma. I was like, oh, if he's torn between baseball and football, the way I see him carry himself on the football field, it looks like he doesn't want to be there. Then the same thing when, when adversity hits during the season, when you watching him play, he still has this nonchalant, I don't care, I don't want to be here kind of face. He gets real agitated real quick. It's not agitated that his teammates aren't following the game plan and buying into the culture. It's aggravated, like, and it's like, damn, Kyler, do you even want to be out there? So I think with him is definitely a passion, quote unquote, air quote issue. And I think that he's just more invested in just living a good life than being a good football player. So part of this contract was to make sure that he does his job. I think he's always good at doing his job, just running out there and running around and slinging it. That I don't really care to do this, but it's like, bro, you're a professional. So I think he really has to get into the space of I'm a professional. I'm gonna treat this as a professional, and as a professional, I have to do some homework. And I think that them putting that within the contract is just, edging him out there, getting him out of this. Because, and the reason why I brought up the generation thing is, I mean, I see this in a lot of these talented guys coming up now, where they're not as invested in the game as previous generations were because of whatever reasons. And they're just there because they're just talented. And that happened in previous generations, but I think it's a lot more widespread with bigger stars, and they're just like, eh. So I think them putting that in the contract was them, of course, incentivizing him to do so. It's like a fail-safe thing, like, hey man, I don't know how else to motivate this guy. Let's put it in his contract, kind of thing. So 4 hours a week isn't that bad. He can crush that in a day. So I really don't think it's that much to live up to. So I also think there's a bit of air of it where it's a little slightly overhyped, but it is one of those things where other quarterbacks aren't really told to do so. So how do you feel about
Yeah, I just feel like I don't think so. All of the sports shows were basically talking about how this can potentially establish a dangerous precedent. And of course, there was a sizable percentage of people who brought in the race factor because their fear. I don't agree with this, but basically their fear is that intellect and intellectual capacity. And this is I'm not agreeing. I'm saying what they're saying. I don't agree with this, but they're saying that intellect and intellectual capacity has always been a way to keep black quarterbacks from aspiring to get to the top and keeping them from having opportunities and keeping it. Intellectual capacity has always been a mechanism to bar black quarterbacks from being given the big paydays and the big contracts. And so this can potentially establish a bad precedent because you can just start to issue studying addendums into the contract parameters of every black quarterback as a way to substantiate why you do or don't want to pay a certain guy a certain amount of money. I don't agree with that. I think we're well past that. These teams are giving these black quarterbacks opportunities left and right. So I just that to me is a form of race baiting. I'm not surprised to see it. I didn't, I expected it. I wasn't shocked when they started bringing that up, but I think it's race baiting and it's
that's
just another thing to
bring out. That's a big stretch, bro.
It is, but that's what they did, and so they wanted to bring in the race factor as a way to just keep on talking about black people being victims of racism. It's just something that we do nowadays, even when it's uncalled for. I just kind of feel like and so I bring that up to say I don't think that anyone needs to be concerned with this establishing any kind of precedent. I think that this is something that's unique unto Kyler Murray or anyone who is like him. He made a statement like last year or a couple of years ago where he basically said, I've never been somebody who watches film or studies a lot because I've always been blessed with an acumen to kind of get it on the go. And so I've always relied on it. And because I've always been able to rely on that, he called it a God-given gift. He said, because I've always been able to rely on this, I've never been big on study.
Yeah.
So like you want me to pay you $300 million and I can't trust that you're going to be in the film room? Like we keep trying to change stuff. And we talked about the quarterback list a couple weeks ago, and everybody's all mad because Lamar Jackson was outside the top 10. And I think you and I were in agreement where we basically could tell that the way that they gave about making that list was they believed that a certain type of quarterback from a skill set standpoint is more likely than not to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. And that's when and that's the way that lists like that are made. It's about who's going to be most likely to win the Super Bowl. And if you read off the names of every quarterback who won the Super Bowl in the last, I think I read it back to 2010. Every quarterback, pretty much from a skill standpoint, with the exception of Russell Wilson, who many argue kind of was a supporting character behind the defense and the running game, played a certain kind of way and won the Super Bowl. So you get everybody's getting all mad because Lamar Jackson's outside the top 10 when the evidence and the history suggests that a particular type of skill set played at that position is most likely to win the Super Bowl. And so with Kyler Murray, I feel like a particular approach to preparation is more likely than not inherent in a quarterback being successful. And that approach involves film study and work ethic and studying preparation wise. And so if the organization has any sort of concern that Kyler Murray would not be able to hold up his end of the bargain in that regard, then I guess they kind of owe it to themselves to protect themselves in the best way possible within that context. And from that standpoint, I don't know that I necessarily see anything wrong with it. Really, I just kind of feel like this stuff is simple. And if Kyler Murray was the type who gave the impression that he adequately prepared often enough, there would be no need for this type of stuff. And the only reason why it's in there is because the organization must feel as though they'd like for him to be the long-term future, hence why they gave him the deal in the first place. But they want to just know that he is doing the bare minimum. And in a lot of respects, film study and preparation, prior to the game and, leading up to the game is like a bare minimum requirement. That's pretty much all that it boils down to. And he is 100% a Gen Zer. He is like really big into gaming. So apparently when he's like, he's not one of those, he's not a guy who likes to go out. He's not really into that kind of thing. He prefers to just be at home gaming. And so, he has his gaming set up. I think he does Twitch a lot with some of the games that he plays. So, yeah, he's into that. That's, this is the new generation stuff. And so, yeah, he's into that. And it's a new world that we're into, you know what I'm saying? But I just think at the end of the day, if the organization felt strongly enough that they didn't have to concern themselves with his level of preparation, they wouldn't have put that in there. They're just not looking to target these guys and withhold money from them. I don't believe that. I'm seeing too many of these dudes being given guaranteed contracts, $40-50 million plus. And if you're doing your thing, you're doing your thing. And it ain't a race thing. Patrick Mahomes is black, and he makes the most money in the NFL. Or at the time that he signed his contract, he was the highest paid player. Lamar Jackson is probably going to sign a contract that surpasses Kyler Murray's. And Deshaun Watson has the biggest guaranteed contract in the history of the league. All these guys are black. Russell Wilson's contract is also pretty significant as well, which is why the Seahawks could never adequately put enough around him to compete in Seattle the last couple of years that he was there, because he was eating up so much of the cap because he has such a huge contract. So it's not about race. That's just race baiting. This is about if you're doing what you're supposed to do, no one's going to say anything. So I suggest to Kyler Murray that you just satisfy your end of the bargain in that regard and be happy with the fact that you're putting $230 million in the bank.
Well, and yeah, and I think that pretty much summarizes it. I think to me it's the generational thing. I do agree that race baitish angle is a bit of a stretch. I don't. I mean, when they have to go so far around to bring around a point of how it's race related, it's like it's not race related at that point.
Yeah.
And so, but definitely when it comes to how I observe Kyler, uh, I I just look at him. He just plays backyard football. I think Skip Bayless says this about him too, but not in a derogatory way. I think he just says that he just goes out there and just slings it kind of thing, and he just goes reads sling, go read sling, and man, if you studied on top of that, who knows what you would be,
Yeah.
because the reason why Brady is who he is because he studies and he just gets particular and he's nowhere near as athletic as you are. So if you just took, some time out, 25% of the time that Tom Brady spends, I would say at least 40, bro, to 50. And spend that kind of time in the study room and just get into your job and your profession. I mean, the guy could be MVP status every year if he does so. But I think him and his whole I just get it out the mud and I get it how I live, and you can tell how he just running for his life every Sunday. That
Mhm.
it's just he's just playing Texas backyard football. And it's just like, hey man, you can't do this with these guys. You can now. Same message for Lamar. Man, I wouldn't looked at after we did our video. I had looked at some Lamar highlights. I mean, my goodness, his running ability, some of the stuff he does already on wax, like already on film. You could just look back. If he retires, you can just look at his compilation now and go, my goodness, what an athlete! And just imagine if he just squares his shoulders and makes a sound throw, then we wouldn't be having these conversations either. So for Lamar, Kyler, or any other young up and coming, just gifted quarterbacks, I really do wish they do take the time out to refine their game to make it that much more sharper. But just this backyard 7-on-7 type of stuff, it dilutes the game,
Mhm.
and it's deeper than just whatever. It makes it harder to watch when you're out there running for your life and then just fling it cross body. Like, that's not football anymore. It's getting weird. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't have no problem with them putting that in there because apparently he wasn't doing it. So
exactly. That's the thing. They wouldn't put it in there if they felt comfortable with how much preparation he puts in. There'd be no need to add it. It's simple, And to Lamar's credit, I think Lamar probably puts in more preparation time than Kyler
yeah,
does.
I would say so.
Which is why Lamar was able to win unanimous MVP. He
Mhm.
did his thing that year. I don't think that that's necessarily going to pave the way to winning a Super Bowl. Although I will say this though, because I had to think about this. Like, so Lamar won MVP, and then and then they lost. Like, I think they went to the playoffs that year, lost in the first game. So like the knock on him is the way that they can't come from behind, and how his game isn't necessarily suited for coming from behind. But be that as it may, um, he puts in enough time to the point where he can perform in such a way that he can be a unanimous MVP, which you can't take that away from the guy.
Right.
It's just, whether he's actually going to be able to put two and two together. And, to be fair to him, the Ravens were decimated by injury last year. So, let's see what happens with Lamar when they have their full complement of players on the roster, healthy and not hurt. And then he as well is also healthy and not injured. Because thus far we haven't necessarily seen that. Again, my speculation is that still won't get the Ravens to a Super Bowl. But in order, just to kind of be fair to Lamar, it is true that we have not seen that yet, where Lamar's been healthy and the roster's been healthy, and what happens after that. But in terms of Kyler, yeah, if he put as much preparation in as Lamar does, who knows? But yeah, he is kind of just running around out there. And there's less of a reason for him to do that because he's on a team with weapons. So
Right.
like, you got a nuclear weapon of a receiver in Hopkins, and then you got a good number two in AJ Green, who when he was in his prime was elite, and then you got the running game, you got the defense. So the reason, I look at their roster and I say, why is he running that much with that roster? It must, maybe it's because he at times doesn't know what's going on out there because he's not, as prepared as he should be.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing for these guys, man, that an NFL job is an afterthought. Like he literally made it to the NFL as all right, I'll do that.
Yeah,
And I mean, like, damn, bro, like you're really good. And he's like, yeah, but whatever. And
yeah,
that's his whole thing. So hopefully he gets over that. I don't know, that's going to be kind of hard of a thing, but I mean, maybe he needs to. I mean, maybe he needs to grow out of that. He's still young, so he still has this whatever demeanor to about it. But yeah, man, hopefully he gets it together. So
yeah. Facts. I think it's more easy to notice that in the NBA. Like in the NBA, it's more easy to see a guy who
Yeah.
got to the league and then they fizzle away. And it's like, whatever happened to that guy? He
Mhm.
didn't really have much of a career. Oh,
Mhm.
he just really actually wasn't really good like that. Because he was good enough to get to the league, but he wasn't good enough to do the things needed to sustain a career.
Right.
I think we see more of that in the NBA than we do or rather, I think it's more noticeable in the NBA
Yeah.
than it is in the NFL. And maybe that's because I'll speak for myself. I follow the NBA more, so I'll remember far more, NBA bus, if you will, than I'll remember NFL bus. But it's just glaring to see that. I agree. It is kind of weird to see that.